Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and give them a big round of applause for Yevgeniya Gazman.
We met at Hillel Day School. I was the Soviet immigrant that dropped in the middle of 5th grade. He was the epitome of a nice Jewish boy. We were friends. We passed notes in class. In 8th grade, I got a detention for accidentally pushing him into a locker. So, good friends. And he was almost my first kiss outside of our choir teacher's office, but he chickened out. So almost really good friends. We went to different high schools. I went to North Farmington High School. He went to Berkeley. And we didn't really keep in touch. But the few times we ran into each other, we would always end up playing tennis. And this kid was a state champion. On top of that, he looked like Pete Sampras. So I was way outside my element, and I don't know how my ego handled it. Probably because he took it easy on me. We both went to the University of Michigan for undergrad, and I don't think I even knew he was there until one day I went to see somebody at this house I hadn't been to before. I opened the door, and just inside was one of these white dry erase boards. On this board was his last name. He has a super common traditional Jewish last name. So I'm just like, what are the chances? And then the other part of me is like, why not ask? So I asked if he lived there, and about a week later we were dating. So we should have been this storybook romance. This, middle school sweethearts live happily ever after. The thing is even though we were the same age, I was already decades older than him. And, he was so tender towards me. I remember one evening, we were in my dorm room at Markley. We were sitting on my futon, and my head was on his lap, and I was just really tense and just trying to kind of hold it in. And I remember he said to me, "Do you know that Beatles song, While My Guitar Gently Weeps?" I didn't, but that title it made me wonder, does he know how much I hurt right now? On the flip side, I was cold when he needed me. I couldn't handle his emotion. And I remember our last night together. We were at his parents' house. We were on the couch watching Lantana. And he broke down. And I just couldn't handle the vulnerability. I walked out the door. I got in my car and drove away with him pleading at the curb. Didn't come back. I was a child the first time a man touched me out of sexual desire. It was in the Soviet Union, in my grandparents' apartment where I was raised. A relative was visiting from out of town. I don't think I'd ever seen him before, and he was alone in my room with me. He wanted to play this game. He would pull my clothes away from my body and look at my private parts. And I remember this fear of not understanding what he's doing or why he's doing it. And I just kept thinking, is it worse to be on my stomach or on my back? And I thought, if I'm on my back, he can poke my eyes out. Because I was a child, and I thought, what's worse than having your eyes poked out? And I couldn't imagine, him doing anything worse. And I don't remember how it ends, but I know that I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to upset my grandparents. When I became sexually active in high school, I didn't see what the big deal was, and it didn't feel like a big deal. my boyfriend at the time, when we started sleeping together, I didn't feel closer to him. In fact, it was that coldness, because being molested as a child, it broke me. It pitted inside of me this anger, this hatred towards men. And somehow I was split in two. One half of me was this kind, caring, sweet girl, and this other part of me was competitive, defensive, manipulative. And I mean, my first boyfriend saw all of it. I broke up with him maybe 6 times. And yeah, so by the time I was at the University of Michigan, sex became this drug, because I realized that sex was a way for me to not feel. That pain that I was going through, it was a way to just block it out. For that period of time, I could just be like nothing. And I treated myself like nothing, you know? Sex was compulsive. It was just careless and a dead end. And I could not wait to leave the University of Michigan. When I graduated, my parents gave me a check, and I promptly bought a ticket to the farthest place I could think of, New Zealand. The common way to see New Zealand at the time was to hop on a bus tour. And one of the most memorable stops for me on that bus tour was Franz Josef, New Zealand. It is known for its glaciers. And when I arrived on this bus, it stopped in the center of town. I, grabbed my bag, headed to the hostel, dropped things off, and then I headed for my activity for the day, which was kayaking through glacial waters. I walked up to this one-story house where the group was gathering, and they were all in the yard, and I kind of surveyed who was going to be with me. There were 2 guides. My eyes landed on one of them. He had broad shoulders and a wide, welcoming smile, this contagious ease, and those golden dreadlocks. The other guy had short brown hair, and he was obsessed with the upcoming New Year's Eve holiday. So the plan was, while we headed out kayaking, he would be mixing a cocktail for us to taste test later. And as we're standing in the circle, I'm looking around, and I notice something that doesn't belong. It was this white board about the height and width of a surfboard with these super basic, pencil scratches on it. And I noticed it because she had so much potential, and yet she was being wasted and displayed like she was ready for the world. Hey, I can paint you something better than that. The guide stopped mid-instructions. All eyes are on me, and I repeat myself, I can paint you something better than that. There was awkward laughing, but I wasn't kidding. I felt the sense of purpose. I wanted to give this board a bold new life. So I persisted. I'm like, do you have paint? And they were like, maybe red, black. And I don't know about you, but I don't think there's anything sexier or more inspiring than the combination of those 2 colors. It's like fury and emotion and passion. So I'm like, okay, file in the back of my head. We headed off to the water, and it was stunning. We paddled around, and under the canopies, we swam. I saw black swan. That's a real thing. Black swan are a real thing, and they're gorgeous. And my guide, he was so chill. And he didn't need to say much, and he didn't, because the nature just spoke for him. By the time we got back to the house, we were high on New Zealand, and the cocktails were ready. There was chatter and laughter and, music. It was just so fun. And then the crowd began to dwindle, and I turned to my guide and I said, how about that painting? No one remembered except for me, but he did miss a beat. We grabbed that board and pulled her inside, and we grabbed the paints, and I had this vision of a red kayak on black with a fern curling from the base, forming the center. In the Maori culture of the native people of New Zealand, the fern symbolizes new life, change, strength, and peace. I could feel his nearness. There's something so sensual about being near someone you want but not being able to act. I remember the stiffness of the floor beneath my knees as I hovered over the canvas. The steady strokes of my paintbrush along the contrasting curves of red and black. The ceaseless exhaustion of endless exertion. The climax of executing our vision. The passion of making art. We had loved that whiteboard into a vision of strength and power and love, and we were exhausted. It was late, really late, and we were spent and in awe of what we created, and he said, "Stay." I wanted to stay. I followed him behind the house to his camper, and we crawled into this tiny sleep cavity, like a womb. And he was so calm. That's kind of just the essential adjective for how he was. He was just calm and satisfied and content to just hold me. Finally lying next to him, having my hands paintbrush free, feeling his body next to mine, I was not ready to sleep. I wanted him. I wish I could tell you the sex was great. Probably was. The thing is, because of my trauma, I don't remember. I black out so much. But I had never felt such harmony with a man creating that painting, such collaboration, such fusion. And it started to uncurl that knot of hate inside my stomach. I do remember his first word when we opened our eyes. He said, "Stay." I wanted to, but how could I? I said to myself, "You are not hurt. He is not hurt. It is understood. You have to go." So I left. I walked back to the hostel, and I remember going into the women's room, and I tried to be really discreet because it's morning, and I'm opening the door only to hear my alarm going off, keeping everyone awake. I made quite the entrance. I didn't choose how my journey started. It is only recent that I stopped comparing my trauma to the trauma of others and recognized my pain. And I have learned sexy is consent. Sexy is harmony and collaboration. Sexy is respect and loyalty. And sexy is mutual satisfaction. And above all else, sexy is the courage to raise our voice and heal. Thank you.
Yevgeniya Gazman.